Hello everyone, welcome in today's video. In today's video we're doing another expected outcome video, but this time I've got some guests on this video because the next death battle is Ghost Rider versus Spawn, and I'm a big fan of these two characters. However, I am not an expert power scaler for either of these characters at all. So for that I've brought some people who are experts in these fields. Starting off, we're going to talk about the person who is an expert with Ghost Rider. Do you want to introduce yourself, Korin O'Keefe?
Yo, what is up, everyone? Korin O'Keefe, back yet again. It's been too long, Corimbus. Thanks for having me back on the channel.
That's nice to hear, Korin. Thank you very much. And also, a brand new guest to the channel, representing Spawn in this video, talking about his scaling, Combat Lightning.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you. Thank you for having me on this, Corimbus, and it's great that I'll be getting to talk about Spawn, as he's one of my favorite characters of all time. So sit back and enjoy the video.
Thank you, Combat. And with that, I think we should get started. I think the first category, and probably people's favourite category to talk about when it comes to fictional power scaling, is definitely that of attack potency. So, I think we'll start off with my new guest being Combat. Combat, would you like to go over the levels of attack potency that Spawn has, and give your pick for what you think DeathBattle will use?
Sure thing. Spawn, in his post-metamorph form, was able to kill Malbolgia when he was enraged, and Malbolgia is the supreme master of the 8 circles of hell. Well, this is impressive, as hell is stated to be a higher dimensional plane of existence. And the thing about hell is that there are 12 levels of them in total, and each one of them is essentially infinite in size, which would basically be like an infinite-sized universe. So the thing with that is that there are these beings called the Hell Lords. Now, the Hell Lords in total are essentially the supreme masters of their own realm. They're essentially just the strongest in their own realm. Now, we do know that they have been due to the fact that Spawn actually traveled for one of them, and it's been heavily described in detail. 6th circle, I believe it was an infinite black patch of infinity that was like so dense, and then not even God's light could pierce through the darkness. And Malbolgia was essentially the supreme master, and Spawn was able to just effortlessly one-shot him when he was enraged after his comrade Angela died in battle in front of him, and he essentially became his own Hell Lord. Though it doesn't really happen until later when he accepts the role, or in the heat of the moment. The impressive thing about Spawn killing Malbolgia is that his war cry alone was able to make members of all creation shake. Now, the thing that I want to specify about that is that I do believe that the timbers of all creation is only referring to all the circles of hell. Now, because I don't really believe this is referring to every single piece of creation that exists within the Spawn verse. Because that wouldn't simply make sense. And for that version of Spawn to be capable of scaling to that when later on he grows more and more powerful. And we pretty much even get this with the likes of Kolyostro on Hell King Spawn. When he accepted the role of being the Hell Lord, we essentially view that the timbers of all creation are just referring to all the circles of hell. That version of Spawn is essentially much more powerful than ever before. In fact, it's pretty much stated that he's grown so powerful as with each passing heartbeat, he becomes 100 times more powerful than ever before, which in and on its own is pretty nuts when you think about it. Spawn essentially go to the low multiversal categories, because the fact that his war cry alone in his inferior form was capable of shaking all of hell, and the Hell King Spawn would just upscale from that even more. Now, the next version that I want to bring up on the AP point is I think a form that is honestly pretty underrated in Spawn, called Resurrection Spawn. This version of Spawn has grown so powerful to the point that he's capable of even contending with the likes of Satan and God in one-on-one combat. So after his symbiote has passively evolved to become so much more powerful, with all the traumas, the challenges, the trials, the Spawn had to endure, it made his symbiote become more and more powerful. This is essentially evident when in issues close to 300, it was Kolyostro and Redeemer talking about how with each passing battle score, Spawn and his symbiote became even more powerful. And whoever even managed to take control of Spawn's symbiote essentially became the most powerful being in the entire universe. To basically run it back, this version of Spawn on his own became so powerful that he was capable of contending with the likes of Satan, and God. However, it should be noted that he was weaker than both of them, because we do see that while he is capable of harming them, he's not really just capable of like going full on toe to toe with them. To talk about the scaling with Satan and God, they are both the children of Mother of Existence. And the Mother of Existence is essentially the supreme being fire spawn in the multiverse. And we basically know that the God and Satan created heaven and hell. And what's also impressive about this is that it has been stated by the author, Alan McCullough, that there are essentially an infinite amount of timelines of both heavens, hells, the green worlds, and so on and so forth. So this on its own will pretty much put them at the multiversal ranges, where Satan and God have been stated by the Mother of Existence herself, that both God and Satan can never truly defeat each other, and it would just be an eternal stalemate no matter what they do. So later we get to what I personally like to call God Spawn, after he ate the forbidden fruit from the apple of Eden, that this version of Spawn has become so powerful that he was capable of going toe-to-toe with both God and Satan, because it was even pretty much said in the comics, after having been bluffed by both God and Satan, that he doesn't just want to waste his time beating the up for him, God and Satan, and to beat the crap out of each other for all eternity, because the thing about Spawn is that he's a strategist. After he basically escaped and had Satan and God by each other in another universe, he merged with the Mother of Existence. And as I said before, the Mother of Existence is the supreme being of the Spawnverse. No one scales to her at all. As essentially from her own quote, she says that there is no power that is superior to her, as everything else is essentially vastly inferior to her. And she basically merged with Spawn, and Spawn at that point essentially became the supreme being to essentially restore all of creation in and of itself. So yeah, I think that about sums it up for Spawn's act potency.
Yeah, thank you for that. Combat. So we've got the different levels for different versions of Spawn. As you mentioned, you've got Hell King Spawn, you've got the Resurrection Spawn, and as you like to call it, God Spawn. As well, you were very clear on like the different characters they scale to throughout the way. So for all of you paying attention, make sure you note that down, because we're now about to move on to Ghost Rider. So with that, Korin, would you like to talk about Ghost Rider?
Well, hell yeah. I'll get right down to business. So, starting off, we know the last time Ghost Rider was on DeathBattle, he fought Lobo from DC Detective Comics, right? So in this DeathBattle, they showed Alejandra Jones unrestricted with Zarathos fighting Mephisto, and they upscaled Johnny Blaze with Zarathos from that, right? They showed Mephisto battling Galactus in his own realm, threatening galaxies. They pretty much had him at multi-galactic, universal level threat back then. Not bad at all. In more modern times, you could say, they moved on up to the east side. You could say, moving on up to the east side, they went to multiversal. They have multiversal scaling for Marvel and these characters. DeathBattle has introduced that in their canonicity, their canon show, in their own little canon, which is pretty cool. So, for them, that's cool. All around entertaining. And it's cool to just keep things evolving and updating, upgrading, and all that goodness. So there's that. But I'm going to tell y'all this, right? Ghost Rider 2006, Johnny's little brother, Danny Ketch, gets tricked by Zadkiel into bringing him all the powers from all the Ghost Riders on Earth, from around Earth. And it's actually consistently made clear in this comic that the power of a Ghost Rider is a threat to existence, is a threat to existence itself, right? Then we move into Heaven's on Fire. Magnificent stuff, people, magnificent stuff. And in this comic, Heaven's on Fire, Zadkiel, it's consistently stated he has the power to conquer all creation. He obtained the power to take control of all creation, over heaven, control over heaven, all that good stuff. And in this comic, he thinks head honcho now. He thinks he's taking out Ghost Riders at the end of the day. He thought he took out Danny and Johnny. But here's what happens though, right? We actually learn in this comic that after Zadkiel apparently destroyed Johnny and his brother. They get brought back. Johnny says, only God can make a Ghost Rider, Zadkiel. You should know that. And only God can destroy one. And then they proceed to humiliate Zadkiel. So it's phenomenal stuff, folks, when you really take it into consideration and look at it under a critical lens. Not only is this phenomenal AP scaling, but this is phenomenal immortality. Type 8, to be precise. Phenomenal Type 8, as only God can destroy a Ghost Rider. So that's something to keep in your mind, along with what I just mentioned. So AP, we already got right off the bat, this dude being consistently stated, Ghost Rider to have the power to be a threat to all of existence. It's Ghost Rider 2006. And then the Zadkiel feat, after he obtained all this power, after he tricked Danny, conquering heaven, taking control of creation. He was defeated by the Riders, the Goats. But we move on to King of Hell Johnny. That's right, folks. He became the King of Hell. King of Hell Johnny, he obviously, he bodied Wong pretty casually. He bodied Wong. He bodied Doctor Strange. But that's still very impressive, though. Doctor Strange, straight badass. But I'll get more into magic later, a little bit later in the video. And it should be noted, right, that when he became King of Hell, he took control of Hell. He had taken control of Hell, which is in itself consistently depicted higher dimensional easily, at least easily. It's one of the mystic realms. Hells are among the furthest of the mystic realms, like with, Asgard and Olympus and all that good stuff. Well, they're all mystic realms, and hells are even further depicted as among the furthest of the mystic realms, these higher dimensional planes and beyond thy mortal concepts of space and time, right? So he also fights King Thor, King of Hell Johnny also fights King Thor. That's awesome. Because even back in the day, King Thor, far superior to very classic Thors like Eric Masterson and his battle with another Thor, they released mystical, magical energy across all planes of reality. And they completely powered a machine that was going to collapse infinite timelines into one singular timeline. And these are just ancient cavemen Thors in comparison to the King Thor that King of Hell Ghost Rider contended with on panel, folks. So yeah, with that being said, I'd say that gives you the gist of AP for now. We'll move on down the line. I'm going to hand the mic back over to Combat Lightning here, and he's going to talk about the speed scaling for Spawn himself.
Thank you, Korin. So to go over the speed scaling, so even in the earliest iteration on it, Spawn was capable of dodging and reacting to light beams from the likes of Angela when she first encountered him. These light beams would upscale from the likes of Overkill, who have been specified to have an engineering biostream laser that, if I remember right, does act at the speed of light. And Spawn was capable of reacting to this on panel and just straight up block it when he was actually aiming for his friend Terry. And Angela should at least have the same stuff with her Heavenly Lance, and Spawn was capable of dodging them. So it should essentially give him faster than light reaction speeds. And this is essentially just his earliest form where he had no idea what he was doing with his powers back then. So then we get to the much crazier categories, where a more advanced Angela, during when the Spawn was battling against Urizen, Angela was capable of battling all of these other angels, and this entire mass army of angels, who basically also have the same weapons as she has, but she was able to beat all of them at once. So the impressive thing about this is her statement of threatening to chuck the angel that she was taking as hostage to the nearest star, and also threatening the other angel to step back 1,000 light years away from her. And something like this has been calculated as massively faster than light, plus ranges given about 6 billion, if I remember correctly. What's even crazier is that before this, in Spawn's special 50 issues, Spawn was capable of traveling through one of the realms of hell. And if you remember what I was talking about for the attack code, is that each realm of hell is infinite in size. This also includes traveling in between them. He was capable of traveling through the entire infinite black patch of infinity, and that it was so dark that even God's light was able to shine over it. So that would essentially give him infinite speed. And there was also, and even before this, in the 50th issue, his soul, when he cured Terry and seemingly expanded the last of his powers, his soul had essentially traveled to hell so fast, nobody there knew how long it took him. It could have been a second, it could have been a minute, a day, perhaps a whole year. No one really knows. That's how fast his soul had traveled there to begin with. And traveling to a higher dimensional plane, speed alone would give it ridiculous. And we also see that with God having summoned an entire horde of souls, made him essentially travel all the way from Earth to heaven with just a flick of his wrist, and basically just summoned him there. But that's not really all. We essentially see that back in the Curse of the Spawn comic, we essentially see that there was this angel that was traveling at faster than light, which was traveling like a tachyon particles, if I remember correctly. But so what's interesting about this is that there was this angel was able to send another angel, essentially through a non-linear time-dimensional measurement. Literally says right there in the comic. And that's basically just a random unknown angel. And that's essentially something that God created, like it was nothing. So it would pretty much be natural that the likes of God and Satan would easily upscale this. Then you pretty much have God's Spawn being able to contend with both of them at the same time, where it would pretty much last for eternity. And then you have a Mother of Existence Spawn, where he fused with the Mother of Existence, which would be even faster than that. So yeah, that gives some crazy ranges. So with that said, I'm gonna give the mic back to Korin O'Keefe.
Well, thank you, Combat. Now, going over speed, starting off, obviously, they got the Thor's hammer feat. They love it. My God, they love that stuff. DeathBattle has the Thor's hammer feat, of course. They're going to scale Ghost Rider to that. They absolutely love it. But there's obviously other speed feats, you know. I mean, heck, I'm just throwing more finite out there for you, but we'll get to the real juicy stuff in a minute. But obviously there's Gladiator casually crossing multi-galactic distances in the blink of an eye, in the blink of Houndow's eye. Houndow from Asgard, in the blink of his eye. Pretty insane stuff in its own right there. And we just have, in general, right, for finite, there's many characters. Silver Surfer has crossed multi-galactic and universal distances effortlessly, just utterly and extremely casually. And there's plenty of statements why the Marvel universe on a finite scale is just so much more vast than, our universe, our observable. And it's just bigger than a lot of other finite observable universes from other fictional verses. And from what I have seen for the Spawn verse, the Marvel universe is likely comfortably bigger. So that's something to take into consideration for speed on that. Now, obviously, you go higher routes, the infinite universe is consistent, crossing these infinite distances utterly casually, just extremely casually, no effort. All these characters doing it. Gladiator, Silver Surfer, and obviously Ghost Rider is definitely scaling, folks, pretty easily. Heck, there's so much even mentioned in the AP section that indicates he scales to the speed stuff. And of course, they already demonstrated it on their show, the hammer stuff that they freaking love, man. They love it. And it's a good feat. But Yeah, and there's obviously immeasurable speed feats. Surfer has immeasurable speed feats. There's feats of traveling through higher dimensional spaces. Surfer has a speed feat of traveling through over 1,000 layers of reality. There's speed feats of traveling through realms and inside and out of realms beyond the concepts of time and space. So, I mean, you could take speed pretty crazy with Marvel. You definitely can. So, with that being said, obviously there's finite, really high finite, there's infinite and immeasurable, and even higher if you want to go that route. So, there's plenty of ranges for both characters. Now, with that being said, I'm going to hand the mic once again back over to Mr. Lightning here, Mr. Combat Lightning, and he's going to talk about some notable hacks, some resistances, maybe some regen, etc.
Thank you, Korin. Right, so the more memorable stuff, perhaps, that I would think that Spawn would be known for is essentially him having God Sword. That was bestowed to him upon God. Don't ask why when they're enemies. Just don't. It's really convoluted. So what this sword essentially does is that there's not exactly descriptions of like how it works, but it's more so like one of those visual instances seen through visuals themselves that allow you to communicate to the readers, is that it seems to take away your soul when this is actually done. And this is something that the likes of Resurrection Spawn have also had throughout the entirety of his run before he had to basically sacrifice it. Another one of his NDB actually known for is his manipulation of the unholy. Now, what this essentially means is that evil in the Spawnverse is actually very strict on how it works. Essentially, the tiniest thing of how it works, tiniest slimmer of evil, even if you do have good intentions, which most of the time the Spawnverse you basically don't, it's always just something shady. It could be your desire for competition, your desire to rise to power, your greed, 7 deadly sins, even something as tiny as a fly that also has evil in it. So Spawn can essentially manipulate that, and what I mean by that, it allows you to manifest those types of evil, and depending how evil you are, if you've done more evil, the greater the scale is going to be thrown back again. So this isn't essentially like manipulating through your emotions. Like, no, this is actually something very different. So like what this basically does is that it manifests those evils you did into physical reality, and once those things come in contact with you, they basically force you to commit suicide by eating through your own soul. And speaking of the soul, Spawn can also manipulate souls, as he can also touch them, interact with them, see them, and hear them, all that jazz. So essentially he can also devour souls as well, thanks to his symbiotic cloak, being capable of doing this to the likes of Zera. Or in a more famous example, back when this was written by Brian Holgreen, is that he was capable of putting those souls when no one else could see, hear, or even touch them. And he was able to put those to rest. And of course, he also has a power, thanks to the Green World, where it allows him to essentially see and feel every sin that's been happening on the planet. And depending on the way of the sin, Spawn is essentially going to go after him immediately. Now, one of his more famous examples, not exactly in terms of like offensive acts, but more so through his regeneration. There are ranges to his regeneration in where he's capable of regenerating from decapitation, and even when all of his body parts were basically blown up, he was essentially capable of like regenerating from that immediately thanks to his symbiote. And the most famous example of this, he was capable of regenerating through being erased from existence by Angela's heavenly staff. So we know that this would be the existence erasure, because earlier in issue 9, we saw that Angela was capable of erasing another young Hellspawn at the time, 900 to 800 years ago, if I remember correctly. It's heavily described that it pretty much erased from this physical plane of existence and all that jazz. But Spawn was actually capable of coming back from this, and when actually questioned how this was possible, or even by other angels, it's been explained that essentially he somehow came back through unknown means. The staff itself was somehow also erased from existence. Now, something that I want to debunk on is essentially that Spawn is weak to holy weapons. Now, this isn't necessarily true, even back in the earliest days of Spawn. So, we see that when Spawn was hit the first time by Angela's Heavenly Staff, it's been acknowledged in Angela's own miniseries that should have destroyed him completely and utterly, with no trace to remain. But even back then, Spawn was capable of resisting it, to put it more simply, to understand. And back when he was post-metamorphosis Spawn, when his symbiote had evolved for the very first time in that series, Mammon states that it shouldn't be possible for even that Spawn to be capable of interacting with the Holy Land, right? And that it should have annihilated him completely. But Spawn pretty much rebutes this by saying that the rules of heaven and hell don't really apply to him anymore, because he's essentially evolved so far beyond what deemed as impossible for him, for he essentially humiliated Mammon afterwards. And I believe that also another one of his abilities, since I don't want to keep it babbling on for too long, is his ability to drain energy and life force through the usage of evil, which is another usage of the unholy manipulation, like I mentioned before. He can essentially drain your soul, your life force, and essentially even your very power in itself, so to basically to boost the Spawn's parameters, but to also drain you while you're at it. And with that said, I'm going to give the mic back to Korin O'Keefe so he can talk about the Ghost Riders stuff.
All right. Appreciate it, Combat. So, starting off, obviously we have the signature penance stare. Now, the penance stare, well, first of all life is a sin through the eyes of the spirit of vengeance. All life is a sin from their perspective. And the penance stare has even worked on characters that have, in a sense, evolved past caring and feeling a certain way. Like they don't care about certain things. Like they actually have evolved to the point where it's just like their natural thing to do. And it doesn't they don't have remorse or anything of the sort, but it still works on them. Because as I said, all life is a sin. And this could be pretty problematic for Spawn, but I'll get a little more into that at the end of the video. But obviously we have moving into Hellfire. Hellfire on its own is pretty potent, to say the least, pretty freaking potent. For one, it's stated to be mystic or magical, mystic in nature, mystic, magical in nature. Hellfire, it obviously burns the soul. As a matter of fact, it burned Water Wizard's soul without even directly harming his body. It directly attacked his soul. Even when they were underwater, the Hellfire still worked. So that's awesome. And we also know that Hellfire kind of negates magic. It weakens magic and mystical enchantments. We even see this back in the day with Hellfire and King of Hell Johnny. Actually, when Doctor Strange and Wong had Mephisto locked up, Mephisto's like, oh, you won't be able to break me out. Wong and Strange have this thing all doctored up, with all kinds of crazy spells and enchantments and this and that and the third. And Ghost Rider's like, their magic ain't got nothing on me. And he just yanks the gate, right out the door right off. And the magic, it didn't have anything on him. He just negged it right there. And that's powerful. That's what I brought up a little bit earlier, him fighting and bodying Doctor Strange. I mentioned magic briefly. I think that's going to be an important factor in this fight. The Hellfire's nature of being able to weaken magic and negate magic, and him being able to fight these powerful sorcerers like Strange and all this good stuff, all this goodness. But we also move down the line, and Ghost Rider has his own regeneration. And as I mentioned earlier, immortality, I brought that up earlier, but he has regeneration. For one, we've seen Ghost Rider just poof, right back in the next panel after his body was pretty much vaporized or destroyed. It was just blown up. His body was blown up pretty much. And within the next panel, he just poof, he's right back. So right there, it's really good regen on its own. But he's also listed as having godlike regeneration, which actually would put him above other characters who are already capable of regenerating from a single molecule. So pretty freaking good stuff, folks. Pretty freaking good stuff, if I do say so myself. And of course, it's stated only God can truly destroy a Ghost Rider. Even when Zachiel had the power he had and he was able to erase stuff from existence, he had control over creation and all this, he couldn't fully destroy Ghost Rider, even with that, right? So that's something to definitely consider. And we even see when Johnny allowed the hand to kill him that he was still needed, right? He's important. He was still necessary. So God, even when Johnny's like, nah, I want to take my own life, or even if he tried to do that, or if he just let someone take it, it's like, if you're putting him at his best and giving him what he has at his best, God's going to bring him back. So there you go. Johnny himself has phenomenal regeneration and phenomenal immortality. Goat Rider. Now, with that being said, he has resistances to plenty of hacks. He's a tank. I mean, he's tanked instant death hacks. He's took death hacks on more than one occasion. He's actually been able to resist and handle Stephen Strange, legit badass. But Ghost Rider was able to resist him trying to nullify his power, right? So right there, resistance to pretty potent power nullification. So good luck trying to just completely nullify him. Good luck trying to just take him out with death hacks, because he's like, nah. Plus, it just goes back to the immortality too, that crazy type 8. And at the end of the day, he's just negating very powerful magic. He can weaken magic. He has potent hellfire that burns the soul, even works underwater. He has his signature penance stare. He views all life as a sin through his eyes. And I should mention this, that souls in Marvel are actually connected with the mind and one's essential life energy, one's essential life essence. The soul, mind, and life force are pretty much one and the same. And it's actually stated, there's consistency for this, that the mind contains entire universe, a layered universe. It contains, in the soul and mind in this case, would contain entire universe of an infinite amount of demons and angels within it. It has layers within it, a boundless totality of a universe. And that's something to definitely consider. And it's also, every man's mind contains worlds beyond worlds, worlds between worlds, an entire universe. And then we know a universe comprises a whole multiverse and the metaversal spaces. We also know that the soul of a mutant is 1,000 times more powerful than that of a human. And a god, their soul, is superior to that of a mutant soul, which is 1,000 times more powerful than that of a human soul. And we have the astral plane, the astral forms, which is an incarnation, incantation of one soul, which is within the infinite psychic matrix of, it scales to this astral plane, this infinite psychic matrix of the astral plane, which is a higher reality, a higher frequency of reality that's not limited by time, space, or form. It's the realm of thought, idea, narrative. It has a bedrock level, followed by a seemingly endless amount of levels extending upwards from there within the astral plane. So yeah, folks, pretty crazy stuff to consider when you think about it at the end of the day under a critical lens. That being said, though, I'm going to hand the mic over to Big Pimpin' Corimbus and see what he has to say.
Thank you very much, Korin. Now, both you and Combat have said a lot more that I didn't even know about for either character, and it seems that both are going to be extremely powerful, even more so than what I expect than what I expect DeathBattle to give either of these characters. So much so, it makes me wonder, when it comes to what DeathBattle are going to give these characters as of all the scaling, what do you think they'll do in terms of the peak levels they will give each other? So on the top of my head, as an example, we heard from both of you that both characters at one point became the king of their respective hell. We also know that both of them have a relation to what's their versus considered of a god. So would they go up to King of Hell Spawn? Would they go up to King of Hell Johnny Blaze? Will they go to the Ghost Rider that was able to beat Zachiel? Will they go up to the Spawn that was able to overcome God and Satan's eternal rivalry? So this is an idea that I would like to propose on saying, what do you guys think is the limit of where DeathBattle will go for these characters? Because that limit ultimately is one of the more important factors of finding out how strong they are, at least within the DeathBattle way of how they scale their character. Spawn has a lot more defined levels. I think I'll start off with Combat now. Combat, what do you think Spawn will be at his defined level according to DeathBattle?
So my prediction for that one is essentially they're gonna be going from form to form, like his classic form to his post-metamorphosis self, to his King of Hell self, and essentially going up to his god form, and then like his divine form, or as I like to call it, him fusing with the Mother of Existence. So I think they're gonna might go for the sum. So I'm gonna be a bit more optimistic and say that they might go for the more somewhat similar tiers that I basically gave to Spawn. And at the very end, I think that they might even give him like a multiversal range, primarily due to the fact that him as fusing with the Mother of Existence was like able to recreate like all of creation by himself. Yeah, they might go for how do I say this? Not really stretch it, but just more so is that they're going to be taking it up a notch, and they're giving far more justice than what they did with Spawn versus Kratos. That's all that I have to say.
That'd be 100% true, because Spawn v Kratos didn't even have stats in it. But I 100% agree with that. I think because of DeathBattle's style, they like to show like the evolution of characters. I think that was inspired by like Goku versus Superman, with Goku going through different forms. I can imagine they will like have him evolve for his form, so I do think that's true. With that also, let's talk to Korin about what they think they're going to do with Ghost Rider. We know last time on DeathBattle, they did Ghost Rider and they gave him Zarathos as a second form. Do you think they're going to do more for a Ghost Rider this time, Korin?
Well, I would like to think so. I would like to think they would go more into King of Hell, more into his scaling, more into his stuff, go a little more into the 2006 run, work their way up to Heavens on Fire. No, not just for the immortality aspect, but actually, I'd like to see them. I could actually see them going that route as well, like starting from the old days, even like classic Ghost Rider, and starting off and his whole back and forth thing with Zarathos at first, and working the way up from there, because there's times like back then he was stated to be the certain strongest out of the room, and like he did stuff with Thor and the Avengers back then and Doctor Strange and just stuff like that, and then work your way up to when he starts improving more, and get your way up to 2006 and the tragedy, and the crazy stuff that goes on in there. It's epic. They might work their way up, I could see that, and then obviously leads into Heavens on Fire and the scaling, the all of creation, the existence, and defeating Zadkiel. I can kind of see them potentially putting that like up there with the whole mother of existence stuff. I could see them like creation versus creation kind of feats type of thing. I could also see them doing a similar thing with the Hells if they interpret both of them at a similar level like that, you know. So I could see for both sides with Johnny as well, Ghost Rider working up the ranks. I'd like to see that, you know. I'd like to see him go over different ones, different feats like that, and highlight them. But ultimately, I could also see him going that route before, but just kind of expanding a little more on stuff, like obviously throwing the updated scaling out there they've had since then. But yeah, so either way, I see this going. I have hope, you know. I have good hope for it for real. I could see it going pretty good.
That sounds great, Korin. And I'd say one last thing. So from listening to both of you, it sounds like it could be a clash of cosmology, which I think that was like the conclusion of Goku v Superman 3, wasn't it? They had Goku was at a multiversal level, they had Superman at a multiversal level, but what they said was like the DC multiverse was bigger than the Dragon Ball one. So in this one, do you think they might do a comparison between like the Marvel one and I believe it's Image Comics for Spawn? Do you think it'll be a comparison of those two cosmologies? And if so, do you think that would be like their ultimate deciding factor on who wins?
Honestly, that's what I was kind of getting at. Yeah, in a sense, with the whole them comparing the creation level stuff with one another, potentially them comparing the Hells, and then they say these things, but then they say how they have, similar names, they come off similar, they give these vibes. However, they could say, however, then that's when they go into, but Marvel is just a lot more vast on the inside going up, and this, or something like that. They could go that route. I could absolutely see that being a deciding factor for sure. That on top of, like, because if they have the cosmology advantage to Ghost Rider, then it just really just solidifies the immortality even more, and he's just going to be a tank throughout that, just a monstrous tank with the bigger cosmology edge. And then obviously the Hacks are they're going to do their thing too, regardless. Like even with Spawn resisting, when Ghost Rider, they give him the larger cosmology, which, to be honest, Marvel does have a larger cosmology. So I do definitely see them going that route, like they did with, as you mentioned in the third one for Goku v Superman. I could see that. And I would just say, ultimately, I think if that's the case, that they're going to say outside, I see them saying that, right? But I also see them saying, other than that, Ghost Rider just kind of hard counters a lot of Spawn stuff, because like a lot of Spawn stuff is magical in nature itself. And the Hellfire, the Penance Stare, I could definitely see that giving Spawn trouble. And you could definitely say Spawn has stuff to give Ghost Rider trouble, but at the end of the day, I would say Ghost Rider has more going for him to keep him in the game and to be able to survive and handle the stuff that Spawn throws at him. Whereas ultimately, eventually, it's going to just wear and tear on Spawn, and he's going to get taken out of the equation. So I see it really going that route. I see them giving Ghost Rider the AP edge, obviously, because cosmology, I see that comparing the creation stuff, the Hells and all this stuff, but then just going into more detail on why Marvel's is bigger, and then going and say, on top of that, Ghost Rider is faster. His Hellfire negs a lot of Spawn stuff. Spawn can't really take him out. And the stuff that could potentially take him out, it's like Ghost Rider, get a whole suicide thing. It's like he's just going to get brought back. Doing the whole soul hacks, it's like that's not going to destroy him either. Zachiel wasn't able to destroy him. And Souls in Marvel are just more built different if they choose to bring that up and go that route, which is pretty legit. So, yeah, ultimately, I would have to give it to Ghost Rider. I see them going that route, the cosmology route, and then complementing the other stuff afterwards for sure.
That sounds good, Corey. And with that, I think one last thing we should definitely do is get Combat's opinion on what he thinks their conclusion would be.
So mine isn't too far off. Mine isn't very far off from what Korin was saying. And I think a part of it and it would definitely have to do with the cosmology factor in. And it's sort of like compare like the circle, kind of like comparing the circles. Basically remade like a very big circle. Ghostwire is basically a threat to a very very much bigger circle to begin with. So I kind of think it would come down to that, and it would probably list like a lot of spawn hacks to begin with, and basically like get into where they might explain that, well, surely because he has more hacks, he should be able to win, right? And it would probably explain that no, that's not really how it works, because Ghostwriter stuff. So from everything that was basically explained from this video alone, it's essentially far more potent than what Spawn has. So essentially, it would just basically come down to quantity versus quality. Spawn in this case being the quantity where he has far more versatile hacks. I can also kind of like tank his own, don't get me wrong, but Ghostwriter is just entirely built different. He is all about quality to begin with. It's sort of like how they explained with the Kratos versus Asura video about like the whole stats gap thing alone. Except in this case, they were probably just going down with the hacks ranges and not just with the whole power and speed. That's how I think would also go.
Thank you very much, Combat. With that, I've got to say, from listening to both of you, I 100% agree. I think the winner of this death battle will be Ghost Rider. I hope that when Death Battle do their death battle, it will have as much respect for both these characters going over everything. We don't want to see anything ridiculous in it. We want to make sure these characters are fully given as much scaling as possible. I hope it's going to be an exciting death battle too. With that, I'm going to be signing off, saying thank you all for watching. Of course, if my co-host would also like to sign off.
Korin O'Keefe out, folks. Thor's hammer across the galaxies we go.
I'll see you all later next time, people.
Thank you very much. And with that, goodbye.